Yes, that phrase, this is a man's world, but with a question mark. So my name is Siobhan Brown, as was mentioned, and I am at Clanmil. I'm just going to give you a little bit of a Clanmil context, but it's not Clanmil per se that I'm here to talk about. I'm here to talk about my personal experience, as was mentioned just now. But what's lovely about Clanmil is they're so not afraid of women. We have a high proportion of women within the organisation. And sorry, I've got my coat on because I'm freezing. I don't know about anybody else, but I can't really function if I'm cold, so I'm going to keep this on. So we have a commitment within Clanmil to embrace diversity and equality and equal opportunities. That's borne out with our chief executive, who's a woman, and so obviously knows all about having women in the organisation. And also we have a very strong contingency of women within our development team in which I work. We manage about 400 projects each year. We have a very high turnover, 32 million within the organisation. We do a lot of housing. So, and it is women that lead a lot of our projects. So we're not afraid from a gender perspective, but it's really, really interesting that women's tech is coming up in most people's presentation, which is a testament to the strength of their leader and what they do. But what's really lovely and why we're proud to be working with women's tech is that synergy between housing and some of the tenants that we have who are single mothers or single women moving into our homes. And what we tried to do there was, and which has been working very successfully, is to try and help these women to be independent in their own homes, so they don't feel as if they have to rely on a man to do general repairs. So they are doing things like plastering and painting and electrical work. Brilliant synergy. We also do, within Clanmil, we subscribe to Bisocial on our contracts. And I was speaking to Joanne very briefly before. Fantastic, and I know she's going to touch on this, so I won't say too much about it, but it's a brilliant synergy to integrate women into the construction industry. But I'm going to share with you my personal experience. I've been in the building industry for over 30 years, and I haven't been specific because I'm not going to give away my age, because I like to be seen as being young. So I have been in the industry for over 30 years, and so I've come across a lot of behaviours, some good, some not so good. This is me on one of my sites up in Clanmil. I specialise in conservation, that's my love, but what I have really come to enjoy is this synergy between conservation and housing. And at one stage you'll see in the bio there that I used to work in an organisation called Half, and that was the start of being able to combine my architecture with housing. And so you get to work with people from the whole, you get to design, but you also get to see the people that build the buildings and the people that live in the buildings. And it's a very fortunate position to be in. My beginnings, though, came from, and unlike Graham's, I don't know anyone in these pictures. Sorry, I should have thought of that. But my personal experience I became interested in conservation because my dad was a joiner. He's passed away now, but he was a joiner and an all-round builder. And that's how I had some inroads into the construction world. And I loved his smell, the smell of the site. And I loved following him around. And when he said to me, "Pass me the hammer," because he's from Jamaica, so he would have said it like that. I used to love doing that, and just anything. Just used to love assisting him on some of the projects that he worked on. So that was my inroad. And I left from school and went to college, so I didn't do A-levels, but I chose the route of doing a construction and land use course, which was for me because I knew quite early on that I wanted to be in the building industry. And what's interesting about this, and it has been touched on all the things that have been talked about, the path that I eventually took was shaped by a number of things. It is partly shaped by, the discussions you have at home, discussions you have with other people. So having worked alongside, when I say worked, I was a kid, but alongside my dad, I could have taken a hands-on approach and being on site, but I chose the path of architecture. And why did I do that? Because there was guidance from others at the time at school and my parents, and this whole thing of, you need to be an architect because you'll earn loads. We know that's not true. But you are guided by what the things that people say and the choices you make. And when I was at school, what was interesting was I was actually told I'd never be an architect. I was very clear that that's what I wanted to do. But they said, because I wasn't one of the star pupils, they said to me, "No, you'll never make it." But I loved design technology. I loved graphic design. I was very set in my path. And I don't think my results probably traditionally would have got me into the highest architectural school, but I still went with that path. And lo and behold, I got into college and into my BTEC national diploma, and I excelled there. And that was really great. So education was really important then, because being in the construction course that I was on, I found them very embracing. The course didn't limit. Gender wasn't actually, for me, and it could be different for other people, it wasn't really an issue. If you were on the course, you were on the course because you were good enough to be on the course. So you did the course. And it was great the type of course that I had was quite wide range. Although I wanted to do architecture, it taught you a bit about quantity surveying and different things, so you could choose. I was never going to choose quantity surveying, that was really boring. But I knew that I wanted to stay. And my husband is a quantity surveyor, so anyway, he's not boring. So yes, so my education was really good, and I did enough to get into my degree and study architecture, and that was really great. So I'm talking here about the various opportunities that were afforded to me to be able to work in the world of conservation. So the course gave me different opportunities and gave me experience in different facets of the industry for me to try and make my final decision as to where I wanted to go. And then I had support. I remember, we probably all have been in a situation where you get that one tutor who's brilliant, and who inspires you. And I had one called Mr. Woods, and he was really great, and he thought I was brilliant, and I got, you know, the highest certificate. Actually, that was interesting. I was awarded a certificate for being the best female achiever in my college. So it's quite interesting, because at the time I'm not thinking about male or female, yet I got a certificate for being the best female achiever. So it was obviously a thing. And but I got great support from people like Mr. Woods, who encouraged me to keep going, and I got great advice. All these things opened up the possibilities for me to be within the construction industry. But my education, though, I would say, having been asked to do this presentation, I found the education part of my life a very positive experience, as I mentioned before. There was, even amongst my peers within my class, I can't actually remember which was male-dominated. I think I was one of 3 women in my class when I was at Tech that were on that course. And I can't really remember anybody ever challenging my gender to say, you're never going to be good enough for that. And I can't ever remember anyone within the organization really making a distinction as to whether, in terms of our gender, anyone could achieve. So it was very, very positive. Then, having qualified, I would say for me, and everybody's experiences are different, it was employment that I started to see that significant change, that changes in attitude to being a woman. And obviously I am of colour, but that didn't factor in. But I'm bringing that up because it's something that, again, that I just mentioned with Joanne. There are other things to consider in terms of equality and diversity. It's not just about being a woman, but it was within employment that I would say that I noticed a significant change to, for me as a woman. Doing a little bit of research, I came across this comment which concurs with what Barry had said earlier on, that 11% of the entire construction workforce are women in the UK, but the majority of those women are either in design, management, behind the desk, secretary, something like that. And that's my experience too. That's my observation. Even without seeing that comment, that's my observation. And I would put it in a little diagram like this, where that little sliver at the end is the 1% of women that are actually on site. I obviously fall within the grey. And then there are that smaller percentage who are within contractors' firms as QSs or buyers or admin or HR, whatever it is. But that's the proportion. And when I considered that, I thought, that's really, really interesting. Why did the majority of us put ourselves in that grey section? And that is to do with, I'll touch upon what I think it's to do with. And I think it's to do with things like this. So this has been my experience throughout my lifetime. See this one here? Good girl. Oh gosh, I so hate when men say that to me. And especially when you've had 3 kids who are all adults. I even had to say that to a man literally last week. About 3 times he said, good girl. I had to say to him, do I look like a girl? I have 3 kids who are they were all over 18 and 20. I'm not a girl. And I don't think some men even think about it. I know for this particular man, he wasn't really trying to be patronizing. It's just the type of language that some men do have. But all the same, it needs to be thought about, because all of these words and phrases and experience have an impact on a woman. And sometimes you find that you're forced into being a male. You know, you have to walk on site, you know, like this, or you can't speak the way I am. You have to be like, all right, you know, yeah, mate, yeah, mate, yeah, mate, yeah, mate. And you have to take on a persona to survive, to be accepted, to be listened to. And then that's maybe on site and maybe in the office, as was mentioned, as the skit showed, you know, they don't expect you to be the woman that is heading up that site meeting or to be the one that's making the decisions. And it is true that, you know, if you show authority, you know, that's seen as you being, you know, a female dog. Okay, I'll not use bad language. And, or being difficult or any of that. You know, they just don't seem to accept that, you know, accept you as an equal. You know, you're doing a job and you're doing exactly as a man would have to do. So yes, I've had all of that, and you know, I mentioned this down here. Sometimes when you're in the industry, you know, you could think of a career change. And I like being hands-on actually. In my bio, you'll see I worked on Parliament buildings, and on that job I was crawling over floors, in floor voids, in toilets, you know, just crawling on floor. Some of my colleagues from Consult, you didn't know I was doing that, did you? I was getting in and dirty at Parliament buildings. And on other jobs, you know, where I've been in it all, you know, buildings with bird poo up to here. You've been everywhere, done all these things. And sometimes you think, gosh, do I really want to be doing this kind of job? You know, sometimes, because I like those hands-on things and making things and building things, you think that could be a better option. But sometimes those subcontractors, they have difficulties. You know, sometimes it can be tough for them, and some of them don't get paid because you know what that's like. The main contractor had some issue and they don't get paid. And as a mother or as a woman, you know, you don't necessarily want to put yourself in that position either. So you keep yourself in that other percentage, the grey percentage of consultants and management. You know, these are the types of things that you think about and are faced with. Would any of the other women here, would you concur with any of these? Have any of you others had that kind of experience? Yeah, I think so. So I've put this up here as one of the key solutions. Just one. I'm not saying this is the answer, but in putting this presentation together, this is one of the things that sprung to mind. And not that I know everything about Section 75, but we do know it's all about inclusivity and equal opportunities. And it has been mentioned before, I do feel that in the past this has really been a box-ticking exercise. Okay, I've actually been part where I've actually had a member of staff say to me, "Oh, you're from Jamaica. Let's tick the equality, and we've been diverse here." And you know, I've had that, and so but it's not because they're taking a particular interest in me and my background, but simply to tick a box. So I think that it's important that we're looking at Section 75 and all these. Really, they're coming from a positive place, but they should be taken a bit more serious. Look a bit more detail as to what complying with Section 75 and equality and diversity really means. And then looking at reviewing that and implementing some of the outcomes of those policies. So any of you see this program, Who Dares Wins? Anyone? Okay. Why I've got this slide up is because we all know that the army again, is seen as a male-dominated profession. And I happened to watch this, a good part of this year's series, and I was really impressed at how many women participated in this series. I would not be seen doing that. Oh my days! I was totally impressed that these women went all the way. They got to that final, hard stage of the interrogation and things, and they stayed the course. What I found really interesting about this, and I Googled briefly and saw the Ministry of Defence and actually what they are doing for their equality and diversity, and they have actively, and I'm really impressed also at Graham's and Barron's and Gilbert Ash at how they're being proactive in their approach to this issue. But again, as also the Ministry of Defence are doing a similar thing where they're looking at these policies and delving down into what these mean. And they have said, yeah, we don't have enough women, and we don't have enough ethnicity, we don't have enough. And they've actually worked out what they don't have enough of and why, and then they're targeting that. And that's what's important. So I was really impressed. This slide is just a reminder because, like I say, I wouldn't do this, but obviously there are women out there that would do it. There are people out there that do want to be in the 1%. They want that 1% grows. There are women out there that can do the hard work. It's not easy being on site. It's freezing. The facility. Who would even use a male toilet on site? Like I literally would drive 10 miles before I go into one of those male toilets. And on one of my last jobs, I actually had a toilet just for me. I had a toilet just for myself. So the facilities on site are not great. They're harsh, and there's not many women that want to be in an environment that's harsh and cold and dirty and bad language, and where you're not respected, and where they don't even think that you can do the job. You're a woman. What do you know, love? And where you might be threatened. I've been threatened myself. Bad language in my face, and I think, is that really necessary? And what do you have to do? You have to man up and put that person in their place in the most appropriate way possible as a leader, as an architect, as a project manager. So I think the point I'm trying to make with this is that it's important that we analyze what are the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities. We all know threat. T means threat or risks that exist when we employ more women. Because there are weaknesses. We do need to think about it. It's not about saying men have weaknesses, as do women, and it's about understanding what they are. If you understand what they are, then you'll know what to do about it, rather than just ticking a box and doing the 10 steps that have been talked about, just doing it because you've heard about it here today. It's about really understanding it so you know how to target it. Because as far as I'm concerned, there are fundamental differences between men and women and the way we think. So we can use those to our advantages. I think that there should be more choice within the construction industry as to where women can go and the roles that we can take. I think it just should never be limited. Just as it's not limited for these women, because basically, as I said before, there are women that want to do things that I don't want to do. So just put it all out there and just see who the best candidate is. I think there should be more construction-based experiences and opportunities and partnerships. I think it's a bit of a disappointment that women's tech is, and I hadn't heard about, there was another organisation that you mentioned. No, I think you mentioned women returners. You know, there needs to be more of these types of initiatives out there that employers can work with to encourage more women into the industry. I think there needs to be a stronger support and a sort of personal improvement infrastructure within our businesses to help women to grow and to be able to discuss any of the issues or barriers that they're facing. I think that support needs to be tangible. Again, not just a thing that's a tick box that it's there and it's in your job's description, but actually when you want to say something, it doesn't exist. And I suppose it can be. I'm lost for words. Can't think of the word I'm trying to say, but it can be difficult sometimes. Employers can, although they mean well, they're so used to doing the same thing. That's what I'm trying to say. So used to doing the same thing all the time, to step out of that can be really difficult. So I suppose for employers also, there needs to be a support for them to be able to step outside their norms. I think it's important to have really early interaction. So getting into schools, education, really early. You know, young people are very visual. Having more advertising out there that is showing women in construction much more often, so that it looks normal to young people, to young women, to be in the industry. And when we're setting targets, you know, be very thoughtful about what you think that target should be. The Ministry of Defence, they had an interesting target of getting more women in the industry and coming from something like 9%, 9.5% to 15% by 2020. Have a really targeted approach to what. Now I'm roasting. Did you turn? Somebody just turned the heat up just for me. I was like, they were listening. That's what they were listening. So yeah, just being really active about the measures that you feel you need to take because you understand what your strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and threats are is really important. I think, and these are just my thoughts, I'm not saying this is the answer, but I just think women provide a really diverse and creative skill set for our construction industry. Like I mentioned earlier on, we think differently. So it has a particular place for the construction industry. We're really good at problem solving. How many men can multitask? Right? It's something actually women are really, really good at. We're good at problem solving and we're really creative. That can be used in the building industry in any facet of it. Right to on-site. On-site, you know, as an architect, we're having to go on-site and solve problems that occur. Just like that, I work within conservation. When you work with existing buildings, you don't know what's coming up. That's something that you face all the time. You have to solve the problem there and then, because if you don't, you know, you can be hit with claims and all sorts of things. You have to be creative. So we have a really valuable skill set for the building industry. And in terms of the types of actions that I think moving forward that we need to consider is just looking at our policies, the policies that we have within our businesses. You know, really get down into the detail as to what they are, what are they actually delivering, what do we want them to deliver in relation to women and gender and equality and all of that good stuff. What do we want these policies to deliver, and are we delivering it? And I suppose it's about being honest. You know, I like to practice what I preach. I like to be in organizations that practice what they preach. And it is about people. People at the end of the day, and trust has been mentioned, they want to know that they're in trustworthy organizations that will appreciate them as a person, whether they're male, female, whatever that may be. And having this zero tolerance attitude for inappropriate behavior, that's not necessarily always, it's not only policies that can prevent that, that's a cultural thing, it's a heart thing.